Okay. Okay, here we go. All right, tonight the time is 6:04 p.m. on Thursday, December 11, 2025, and I'm calling to order the Fort Point Channel Landmark District Commission hearing. The commissioners present this evening are Rhodey, Umfanor, and myself, Baraducci. Today, the Commission will hold a public hearing to review applications in accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, extending the suspension of these provisions until June 30, 2027. We're conducting this meeting online. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the Four Point Channel Landmark of the Four Point Channel, sorry, Landmark District Commission, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. The hearing is being recorded. All further conversations between commissioners should be audible to the public in attendance until the hearing has adjourned. And at this point, we ask if there are any media or elected officials on the call to please identify yourself by raising your hand in the Zoom meeting platform and state your name, title, and affiliation.
I'm not seeing any raised hands.
Okay. And then when we open up when we open up for public comment, the members of the public will have the opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application and discussion. So to do so, please raise your hand again by raising your hand in the Zoom meeting application. And when we do open up public comment, I'll repeat these instructions. All right, so tonight we have one advisory review to hear, and then we will have ratification for the October 9 public hearing minutes, and then finally staff updates and adjournment. So it should be a relatively short meeting. Okay, so this is an advisory review, so this is application number 26.0492, and it's at 308 Congress Street. And the proposed work is with the Boston Children's Museum, with their proposal to add a waterproof membrane over the existing brick facade of the Atlas Stores building, extending up to approximately 6 feet above the ground level and 1 foot below the sidewalk. New brick or stone veneer will be installed over the waterproofing membrane. Fittings for stop logs will be installed at openings. Okay, so if the applicant is ready, you can introduce yourself and get started.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for having us come today for this advisory review. What we'll discuss tonight is part of the Boston Children's Museum's holistic plans to tackle resiliency at this sensitive site, so that they can continue operating and welcoming the public to the Fort Point for a long time to come. And to save some time, I'm actually going to run through a short introduction of who is here tonight. You won't necessarily hear from all of us, but we wanted to make sure that you know the full slate of people who are here to answer questions. And apologies in advance if I've missed anyone. From the Children's Museum, we have Jug Chokshi, Chief Financial and Waterfront Advisor, Michelle Rankin, Director of Administration and Operations, and Charlene Merle-Smith, VP of External Relations and Corporate Development. We also have a lot of people from the Sasaki design team, including Mike Frechette, Marta Guerra, Zach Crisco, and James Posh, and I think I got everyone. And from ARAP, we have Kara Slocum, Civil and Resilience Engineer. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the design team.
Thanks, Nicole. Good evening. Thanks for that introduction, and we're very glad to be with you. Just a sort of a technical question. Will the commission be rolling through the slides in this presentation?
I can. I have the deck. The most updated one that I have is from last week on Friday. I'm happy to go through the slides. Just say next. You're also welcome to share your screen if you're more comfortable doing that.
Okay, if it's all right with the commission, and I'm happy to share my screen.
Great. Yeah, you should Let me stop share and then I'll give you permission. Okay, you should be able to share your screen now, Mike.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Okay, can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
All right, great.
See you.
Thank you. All right. Great. So tonight we'll start off with sort of a big picture piece about the resiliency concerns of this project as they relate to the museum itself and then the larger Fort Point Channel District. We'll talk about a larger project vision for the museum, and then get into a little more detail with the specific threats posed by sea level rise to the building itself and what the resilience approach to that threat will be. We'll touch on some key considerations for the museum in terms of their operational needs, as well as their partnership with the neighborhood. And we'll also go into a pretty detailed discussion about what our proposed design approach is to address those resiliency risks. And then sort of as a follow-up to that, we'll also talk about the broad range of alternative solutions that we did consider and talk through reasons why those were not brought forward. Last, we'll talk a little bit about some of the context of this project that's happening in. There's a fair amount of infrastructure work going on at Sleeper, Congress, and at the plaza itself in front of the museum that we're trying as much as we can to interface with and coordinate with so that we minimize disruption to the neighborhood. And then we'll go on to next steps. So getting into an introduction on the big why, and I think this is most likely very clear to the commissioners, but the Fort Point Channel area in particular among districts in Boston is especially at risk of the threat of sea level rise. We often come back to this image showing how high the water did get during Winter Storm Riley, where it was effectively cresting the level of the plaza, and combined with flooding at Sleeper Street, really did create an island effect for the museum. And these sort of events based on climate modeling are very likely to increase in frequency and intensity. And so panning out a little bit to take a look at not only the Fort Point Channel District in this red outline, but also the seaport in South Boston beyond, it does paint a picture of the types of the real extent of the threats that sea level rise is posing to the city of Boston. Fort Point Channel is a pretty significant vector for that, for the floodwaters. And part of the initiatives of the museum have been to be good stewards of their place on the channel and contribute to the protection of the district by providing flood barriers on their property. Most recently, we've been coordinating with the city and their climate team to work with a deployable solution that will effectively bring that orange line across their plaza into reality. And then just to move on to what the museum is looking to do in the future. Over the past 6 years, I'd say, the museum's been engaged Sasaki and a broader design team, first for a master plan to really help shape the decades into the future of the museum's operations and understand how they can keep contributing as a member of the community and a critical cultural resource for the city into the future. Following that, in 2023, the museum took on a building level resilience study. So really looking at like pulling in a little bit from the scale of the whole property in the plaza, looking at the building itself, and starting to surface different kinds of solutions for how the building itself could be protected from the threats of sea level rise. Here, just for context, and again, I'm sure this audience knows this site quite well, but we have the 4-point channel in the foreground, the boardwalk, the Children's Museum Plaza and 2006 Atrium Edition, and then the historic Atlas Stores building in the background of their site abutting Sleeper Street and reaching all the way out to Congress. This is a view of sort of a future proposed enhancement to the plaza that looks at how resiliency measures at the plaza could actually be a net public good, creating a civic space that builds on the character of the museum's plaza as an important public space, but also brings it into the future with more civic engagement and resiliency. And so today, this is a cross section we'll look at a few slides from now, again with some additional annotation. But this shows with 4-point channel on the left. This is essentially a slice through the building looking north. And so we have 4-point channel on the left with the boardwalk, the seawall, the museum's plaza, their lobby, and continuing through their building out to Sleeper Street on the right side. And so what we have overlaid here are, in these light dashed lines, are the 2030 100-year floodplain, which is about 2 feet above the current first floor of the museum, and the 2050 100-year floodplain. And that is about 4.5 feet above the first floor of the building. Those represent, in each of those years, represents a 1% chance of a storm event happening that brings water to that elevation. And so now getting into how we're addressing the specific threats that were reviewed and assessed during the 2023 resiliency study. We're taking a look at, again, using the MC Firm design flood elevations. The museum went through a process of evaluating the various risks posed from these different storm datums and what the timeline for those floods really was. And in going through that, we arrived at a 2050 100-year storm as a near enough horizon that it's something where the pace of projects being implemented at the building level might be completed in time for a level of protection, but before certain district-wide or city-wide initiatives like floodgates or more broad-scale things that would protect multiple properties at once, they might not be ready by 2050. So our approach was, let's design to that timeline and give the city a chance to implement their plans further in the future. So here's there's a graphic on the right, which looks at what different 100-year storms would really pose in terms of flood water inside the building. And so it's sort of a graphic representation of that. On the left, we're looking at these different design flood elevations, and again looking at a 2030, which is approaching quickly, 2050, and 2070 as with different associated design flood elevations. And again, looking at 2050 as our intermediate approach that was decided on as the sweet spot, as it were, for setting that level of protection. In conjunction with this, in the midst of the museum exploring the resiliency measures. Article 25A of the Boston Zoning Code now requires new projects in this area to be flood protected to that 4 feet above, effectively above street level in the area of the city of Fort Point. And so this is sort of, we feel like this is helping us understand that this is probably a good design flood elevation to use. Moving into the specific approach of what we're trying to do and how we're trying to achieve that level of protection. The museum engaged Arup engineers to develop solutions and recommendations for how to protect the historic masonry, exterior walls, and structure of the Atlas Stores portion of the museum. And so this is a sample diagram, which comes from a FEMA document that looks at retrofitting historic buildings for floodproofing in a way that will protect the structures into the future. And so in this diagram, what we're seeing on the right-hand side, shaded out, is the existing structure. And on the left, on the exterior face of this, is a waterproofing applied to the existing brick, with new brick installed over that, which is supported on a footing that's attached to the existing foundation. And so this recommendation, after a lot of evaluation of alternatives, became the basis for our approach. And so here's that section again. And what this does is look at the current initiative of the museum. We're currently in the design phase, design development. And what our current scope of work includes, looks at 4 main strategies. The first one is taking all of the critical infrastructure inside the building, raising it up above the design flood elevation. The second one, which is the most pertinent to our discussion tonight, is happening at the exterior. So we're protecting the perimeter walls by applying a dry floodproofing solution. And the third is draining the crawl space by way of a foundation drain that extends beneath the entire original Atlas Stores building and the new atrium. And that water is then stored in a below grade cistern and then pumped out to ensure that there's no hydrostatic pressure on the structure of the building during an intense flood event. And so this section we'll talk about a little bit about the important considerations of the museum and how how this project fits into their operations. And so essentially the reason for this entire project is to allow the museum to keep operating with as minimal downtime as possible in the event of a severe storm. And so knowing that the museum's mission is to be as available and accessible to the public as possible, trying to keep them open as many days out of the year as they can be, is an important consideration. At the same time, we're trying to protect the building while showing respect to the museum's context in Fort Point and the Fort Point Channel Landmark District, including a sensitivity to appearance of the building and the materiality, and how that works with the historical context that we're trying to be sensitive to. An additional thought is really understanding how the solution that's chosen to protect the building will affect their operations. So we'll get into different floodproofing strategies in a few minutes, but we want to understand, do they have a solution that not only protects the building, but does so in a way that allows them to remain operational as much as possible? In other words, if a floodproofing solution were to be chosen that allowed water into the building, that would result in significant more downtime than a solution that was a true dry floodproofing design that kept the entirety of the interior space dry. Similarly, we're looking at the Atlas Stores building especially has a basically a zero lot line condition. And so we're trying to come up with a solution that checks all of our boxes for protecting the building while maintaining a minimal encroachment into the public right of way. And then the last point is the four strategies we looked at in the previous slide really do work together. And so they can't really be taken in isolation. And so these were all designed sort of as a holistic solution to the resiliency challenges that the museum's facing. And then we're looking at construction timeline alignment with the city initiatives. So in this section, we'll talk about our preferred approach that we came to through this has been a years-long effort of evaluating and vetting different strategies and trying to determine which one was the ideal solution here. This plan shows the extent of the treatment. So this is the existing first floor plan. North is to the left. And so this blue line indicates all the areas where we're proposing to add floodproofing to the building. So it's essentially the full perimeter of the Atlas Stores building that isn't enclosed by the 2006 atrium. And so Sleeper Street here on the top, Congress on the right, and the channel at the bottom. And so these are some street level perspectives that show a little more context for where that waterproofing is happening. And so here we have the 2006 atrium on the left. You can see the beginning of the exposed surface of the Atlas Stores building, and then wrapping around the corner at Congress, past the museum's business entrance, and then around the corner of Sleeper here, and then down Sleeper all the way. And as it turns the corner at the north end of the building, it would continue and wrap past the loading dock and then beyond the equipment yard fence, and returning finally to this image on the right, where it would meet up again with the atrium. And so the thought was this would be a consistent solution to the building that would change the visible portions of the brick building all in the same way, in a consistent way. And so as we got into more detail, we did something of an inventory of the unique characteristics of the Sleeper Street facade, which houses a lot of the museum's HVAC rooms along Sleeper Street. And there are a large percentage of windows, especially down at the first floor, that have since been closed off, but still remain as a presence on the facade. And so looking at going up from the bottom, we have there's a plethora of fire department connections. There's quite a bit of miscellaneous infill panels of different materials that are currently either painted CMU or composite fiberglass type material. Many of them are infilled with brick, and a fair amount of them also hold louvers, thinking about their use as parts of the HVAC system. There are two different kinds of stone details on this building. There's a gray Chelmsford type granite, and then brownstone at lintels and sills along this facade. And then of course the red brick is the essential characteristic of this building. There's also some miscellaneous metal items like these rain leaders and the star tie rod anchors. And so this view is a side-by-side comparison of the existing partial elevation of Sleeper Street, showing a representative approach of what we're proposing. On the right is the modified version. And so if you look at this dashed blue line, that's the design flood elevation. So that's the 4.5 feet above the first floor level. which at Sleeper Street is about 6 feet above the sidewalk. What we're proposing effectively only changes what's below that dashed line. And so new brick sitting on a granite watercourse would extend up to the DFE, and the granite sills, which we see on the left-hand side down below at about shoulder height, are raised up to that design flood elevation, effectively creating a shorter window expression, but one that is that maintains the relationship between the lintel and the brick recess that's continuous all the way up the elevation to the 6th floor, where we have similarly shortened windows. Any openings, such as these door recesses here, would be fitted with deployable stop logs. And so the permanent condition would have the jam receiver of that system, but the infill panels of that would be deployed when an oncoming storm was understood to be coming. On the left, we have we're talking about now this intended detail a little more color here. We have a cutaway axonometric, which shows going from the left-hand side to the right, the existing timber structure of the museum, which pockets into the brick wall. We have the existing brick wall sitting on granite pile caps and timber piles, and then we get into the added scope of work, which is in the full color here, which involves a brick detail up to the DFE. This version, we have 2 versions of this, which really differ at the sidewalk level. This version looks at brick with a roll-lock course at the top, with running bond brick all the way down to terminating below grade, as it does today. And that's supported on a concrete shelf. And so what's behind this brick is waterproofing that's applied directly to the existing with an airspace cavity for drainage and ventilation to allow any kind of freeze-thaw risk from exiting the new cavity that's created. You can see on the right in this rendered view, the raised granite sills. This brick would step back as it goes above the DFE. So we have the roll-lock, we have the granite sill, and then above, it returns to the historic brick. And it's our intention to take the tie rod anchors and modify those so that they can be expressed with the star fittings on the exterior. The second version of that base detail looks at introducing a granite watercourse. That's an idea we've been exploring, given the much more resilient and durable properties of granite compared to brick, especially down at sidewalk level, where it's most likely to face water, even during not 100-year design storms in 2050, but on a much more regular basis in a nearer horizon. The waterproofing solution and the support of that cladding would be the same, and the detail at the top of the brick would be the same as well. It's really just this 12-inch to 18-inch tall base course. We have seen there is a pretty common precedent for that in the 4-Point Channel District. Across the street, 313 Congress, there's a similar type of condition. At 303 Congress as well. These are base courses that project out from the face of brick. And so not only the materiality, but the relationship between the typical plane of the wall and the plane of the base is consistent. Going further down Summer Street to 269 and 263, we can see that this is a common solution to bringing the brick buildings down to grade that is durable and resilient to all sorts of wear and tear. And then lastly, a precedent that we have right on site is a granite base at the 2006 atrium addition. These two images today are representative of some of the condition we've observed of the brick on site down at the first floor level at grade, where be it from flood events or use of de-icers and salt chemicals, there's quite a bit of spalling and damaged brick observed along the perimeter of the Atlas Stores building. And so here are those perspectives that we showed in blue earlier, but side by side with the existing perspective of the corner of Sleeper and Congress looking north with the proposed. And so we can see here a bit of relief between the face of the new brick and the existing. We can also see the shortened window recesses here. There are two windows, or three windows, I believe, that are true windows at the first floor. One is along Congress, and two others are along Sleeper. And those similarly would be have their sills raised as part of this floodproofing solution. Here's another pair of views looking from opposite the museum across Congress with the atrium on the left side. This is the existing view and the proposed. So we can see a little bit more of the granite base. We can see the brick being added and the raised sill conditions. And the last pairing of these views, oh, there's one more after this. Here's looking north, looking from the north of the building south to the return of Sleeper Street, where it meets the loading dock of the museum and then extends beyond onto into the equipment yard area and then back to the plaza. So this is from the plaza looking east, showing the return of the brick to meet the atrium. And so now we'll talk a little bit about the dismissed alternatives. The basis of our selection of a dry floodproofing approach, which is different from the others in which it doesn't allow water into the building whatsoever. The reason for that was because even though the masonry is very thick, it's 5 wyths of brick, it is subject to water infiltration and potential damage as a result, given a storm event of long duration. And so Arup had developed some research from a study conducted that looked at flood testing various kinds of masonry test walls, and based on the results of that, calculated that given the perimeter of the Atlas Stores building that would be exposed to seawater in an event like this, almost 200,000 gallons of water would enter the building during an 8-hour duration flood event. So it led us to really considering that a dry floodproofing solution was especially important. And so part of our research looked at a really broad range of different solutions for how to address, in our case, sea level rise, but you can see there's floodproofing looks at coastal strategies and all sorts of different kinds of flooding conditions that can be experienced. Ours in particular is due to sea level rise, but kind of the nature of water puts properties at many different types of sites at risk. And so there's a broad range of solutions that could be considered. Some of them are less suited for a retrofit, for example, like raising the entire building above flood elevation. Others require a lot of space, so either flood walls or levees. And others are a little easier to implement, like looking at backflow valves and check valves and making sure that below grade systems don't back up into the building. And some we we evaluated and took components of. So in effect, the sealants and membranes solution in this image isn't what we are doing because we're covering it with a cladding, but it is representative of the kind of approach that we are using. And then deployable barriers we're using at our openings, but thinking of that as a holistic solution for protecting the building would create a condition that will require a lot more space on site than we have, because we have that zero lot line condition. And so this shows the 3 strategies that were effectively our part of our short list. And so we looked at different ways to use dry floodproofing to protect the building and evaluated them for feasibility, from technical points of view and effectiveness for the waterproofing that's actually that the solution is intending to do, but also the aesthetic considerations of those as well. And so on the left, we have strategy 1, which looked at just applying a waterproofing product to the exterior brick and calling it a day. We know that this would have been the easy to implement from a technical point of view, but it would have very, in our view, damaging results to the character of the building, and ultimately would not be as effective because that membrane is not protected. It's subject to wear and tear, and it would not be a really effective solution, or one that that participated in the language of the 4-point channel neighborhood. The second one, strategy 2 in the middle, looks at a negative side waterproofing, which would apply waterproofing to the interior face of that brick wall. This was eliminated because, as you can see in this graphic, it would allow water to permeate the structure of the building. This being load-bearing masonry, its integrity is critical. And so by the time that waters reach the floodproofing, the waterproofing line, the building walls would be saturated and the timber structure would be subject to a wetting and drying cycle, which is known to really degrade the condition of the timber quickly. And so this was eliminated, even though this would have had minimal, almost zero impact to the exterior appearance of the building. We were quite certain it would not be an effective solution for the museum. The third option looked at cutting away some of the historic brick such that waterproofing could be applied further back, like 1 width of brick perhaps, and then building out with new brick after the waterproofing was applied, so they could have a flush appearance and not modify the profile of the building as it met grade. This was reviewed with our design team, and our structural engineer determined that this would be structurally infeasible because that brick is all load-bearing masonry. Changing the profile of that and really removing structural material from the base was really not something that it was feasible. This looks at that first strategy in a little more detail. This is really about a surface applied membrane that ends up being exposed to view in its final appearance. And so this is something where not only would it not look good, it would be subject to damage given its exposure and not be an effective solution. This looks at a little more detail at the negative side waterproofing, which is applied to the inside face of brick. In addition to, I think, what I was discussing before, where it's looking at saturating the load-bearing masonry, it would also require, in order to install, removing a lot of interior finish space in order to apply it and be an invasive strategy. Also, continuity of waterproofing at this plane compared to the outer plane is hard to achieve. So we have a considerable amount of significant timber beams that pocket into this wall and create a really really difficult perimeter to try to create a continuous waterproofing line with. One where the timber pockets into the brick like this, it's really not possible to keep the timber here and maintain a continuous waterproofing that would keep the timber dry as well. And then this last strategy, this section shows it a little bit better than the graphic. But this shows the existing brick cut away with the waterproofing applied to the face of the next width of brick in, and then the brick replaced back. And so in order to maintain a flush appearance, there really isn't space for a ventilation cavity. And so freeze thaw action happening when water is absorbed by this brick and then freezes would result in significant damage to that outer brick in a relatively short period of time. And then, so that's our dismissed alternative section. Lastly, we'll just touch on how this project is seeking to align with the schedule of the city of Boston, particularly with the reconstruction of Sleeper Street, which is proposed for spring of 2026. This would involve building out the sidewalk along Sleeper where it meets the Children's Museum to 5 feet, and changing the street to being one way and adding a bike lane, I believe. And so what we see in this project is an opportunity to try and align in a way that minimizes impact on the city and not have two, possibly consecutive excavations. And we're working with the city to try to figure out how we can best work together to make the impacts on the neighborhood as minimal as possible. And so we've been meeting with the city on this and really trying to understand what sort of timeline they need from us and how we can collaborate with them to really keep the impact low, as low as street work can be. And so the schedules for our project and the street project are being fine-tuned at the moment, but our approach is looking at trying to fold our work in with that work this coming spring. And I think that's the end of our deck. So I can stop my share.
Actually, Mike, I think it would
Thank
be
you.
a good idea for you to keep sharing, so if the commissioners
Oh,
have
yeah.
any questions, they can
Sure,
get you
of course.
through the slides. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. That was really precise and really showed the image or showed the problem that you have in terms of the solutions. One of the things that I had in mind when you first started presenting was the very thing that you presented at the end was I thought, well, why can't you just take a course of the brick from the facade and take that away, put the waterproofing, and then insert the new bricks so that it would still have a flush condition. And I think you said that there was an issue with you need to do some kind of a barrier, a vapor barrier, did I see you say, or that it wouldn't allow for that?
Right, and so I can jump back to that slide. And so, okay, oh, sorry.
And I guess if you just, you don't have to go too deep, but just explain what the vapor barrier is, what, an airspace or so that you're creating or what?
Sure. So starting with, I guess this
Yeah.
this magenta line.
Yeah.
So that's the waterproofing, and that's an impermeable material.
Right.
The idea is that if you were to create an airspace, right, which is what in a situation where you have a material like brick masonry that actually will store water when it's subjected to water inundation and flooding. that water is essentially, trapped there for a period of time, unless it has a airspace behind it. And so in this solution in particular, in order to create an airspace, we would have to expose even more of that historic masonry, cutting deeper into the wall. And so by the time we got to what this diagram shows, which is like one wythe in, our structural engineer was very clear that it was a non-starter, because of the removal of that structural material. And so the solution that we're proposing that builds out from the face, we have the total projection is around 5 inches or so. And that's because you have a brick that's 3 5/8 inches, and then you have an airspace that's a little over an inch. And what that airspace will do is that when that brick cladding does get wet, inevitably, it allows a channel of air behind it. So there's, maybe I'll go to the preferred
So is the
solution,
airspace intended for just the air to dry the moisture, or for the moisture to wick, to drip through somehow, to wick through that by gravity?
So it actually works both ways. And so there's, at the top of the cavity, there's a vent.
Yeah.
And at the bottom, there's a weep. And so what it does is it allows bulk moisture, so liquid water, to drain out. It's like there's a through wall flashing here that would get tucked in before it would be visible. But it allows bulk water to drain out, but also air to flow between the top and bottom openings. And so that's really for in new construction, certainly. Air spaces are really very important because they protect the building. Not only do they allow that drying potential, but they also prevent water from being driven further into the wall through capillary action. So like if two things are contacting each other, there's a likelihood that they're going to transmit that moisture through, unless there's a break by means of that airspace.
Okay. All right. So this slide is actually a good one to keep up, because I had the two other questions I had here was the window sills that you're moving up to the new height. Is that granite going to be flush with the outer wall? I'm guessing it has to be, right? With the additional veneer that you're putting on?
So our intention for that would be that it is at the moment. So we're trying to carry through that relationship. And so these images might not show it exactly right with the shadow line there. But basically that stone at the moment is at the edges of this perimeter. It's very close to the face of brick.
Right.
But then it's sort of textured out. So it sort of has a chiseled look that kind of flares out a little bit across the piece of stone. We would try to really replicate that same character. We're working with Turner Construction at the moment for pre-construction advice, and we're looking at how we can reuse as much original granite as possible to really make sure that character is maintained to the degree that it's feasible.
But it still has to come forward towards the sidewalk by 6 inches, right? That's what I'm getting at. So in other words, the alignment of that sill is going to be 6 inches out, then the alignment of the lintel above it, and then the sills and lintels above the windows there.
Correct. Yes, that's right. So in maintaining that relationship between like the adjacent brick and the granite, that would place the sill of this first floor window proud of the lintel.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's no way to kind of get around that unless you couldn't really. You'd always have to have that alignments to be the same. So then the hoistway there, the one that's the ground level, I noticed that that is now higher than what the original is currently, but you're raising it up, but you're not going up high enough to bring it to the new elevation of the flood line. So first of all, why lift it at all? Because I'm assuming you're going to have to do some kind of an infill there, right? Like you're doing for the windows that are going to be, or the doorways rather, I should say. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So this, you're right. Yes, this zone, right, is sort of, you know, we will have waterproofing at this level as it returns inside that recess. But yeah, you're right. This, I think some of these aprons at the hoistway, I think generally they're all at the existing first floor level.
Right.
And I want to say that, I don't know if I have an image I can pull up, we could talk about. I think the intent would be to not, you know, like we certainly wouldn't raise them up to the DFE, right? That, I don't think that would
Yeah.
make any
Right.
sense. But I think that a strategy for those, because I think there's one in every bay of the building, so I think there's 6 or 7 of them as we go. So in this image, for example, I think that that's an area where we need to give it a little more study.
Yeah.
We were certainly focused on the windowsills because that's such a common element, but I think um, a similar solution for the aprons is needed.
I can
Yeah.
speak to where that elevation is and the reasoning as to why. James Poche, project designer here with Sasaki. So we were looking, the reason it's set there is that when we raise the sills of the windows, they're not seen in this image here, but when we raise those sills, we were looking at essentially the relationship of the bottom of that hoistway with the existing windowsill. And so we're looking to maintain that relationship. So when you read it along the facade looking down Sleeper Street, we're actually keeping that relationship intact. So if we go to maybe a couple slides before this, when we're seeing partial elevation of the full facade, you can see on the left the relationship, you know, maybe 2 feet lower than the existing windowsills at the bottom level today. And then we're duplicating that relationship. Since we need to rebuild that opening, likely a new waterproofed opening to begin with, we can actually make that hoistway opening waterproofed, you know, as needed. We actually don't need that since we're rebuilding it anyway. So that was the intention there, to maintain that relationship. But if that relationship between the bottom sill and the hoistway, the bottom of the hoistway, is not something that you know, is felt as important, we certainly don't need to do that.
Well, I mean, my whole point in reviewing these kinds of things are, you know, do the least amount of disruption to anything that's of original fabric as you can. So if you can achieve your waterproofing results by not having to move that threshold of the ground level hoistway, at least in my mind, I would say let's keep it where it is. I don't know that I feel that it's important enough that the relationship between existing sill now and the existing threshold of the hoistway as it is now is something that needs to be maintained, such that if you lift the sill of the window, you also then need to lift the threshold of the hoistway. At least that's my mind's eye. So I would say maybe, depending on what the other commissioners also weigh in at it, you know, if it is something that you can not disrupt, then great. And so the doorways, and then whatever is remaining of this hoistway, the barrier that you're putting in are similar to what they've done in other. I think I'm thinking of the building. I don't know the number that's between Summer and Congress that is right along the channel. They have barriers that they could set up that would be right in front of the windows. It would be something like a stainless steel barriers. Is that what you would be doing to the doorways and such here?
They're deployable.
Yes, so a stop log type solution. So like
Yeah.
in plan, you know, you have kind of the rough opening.
Yeah.
There's a kind of a fitting that we would try to minimize the view of, you know, thinking about how we could integrate that with our cladding, and then the barrier itself fits in.
Yes.
But I think
Okay.
that depending on how it's done, those fittings can be really visible. And that's an area we're trying to be sensitive to. And so because we're building out, we're trying to use that as an opportunity to minimize the visual impact of those metal fittings, because it's not
Yeah.
really congruous with the language of the building.
Okay. Okay. And then I just have one last comment, that if you can go to the plan that you show, the blue line that outlines where the yeah, right there. Okay, so what is I understand, sleeper and then the channel and then Congress, or at least the yes. Okay, so then this new addition, you stop it right at the new addition, right?
Mhm.
And what is to say that water doesn't go through that addition, or, then into the building that way? Or is there?
Right. And so it's every expectation that, like, in an event that threatens the Alice Stores portion of the building, that the atrium certainly would be threatened. And so I'm just going to really crudely draw this, but so one of the city initiatives we're coordinating with is their interim flood protection strategy along 4 Point Channel.
Yeah.
And so part of that is resulting in a line of deployables that's going
Oh,
to extend, not quite in this line, but just generally speaking,
okay.
so that it'll meet with the design flood elevation of Congress. And I'm not actually 100% clear about how this strategy like abuts with adjacent properties, but um, we've had several meetings with their team about how best to execute this around existing below grade utilities, and also how, now that Martin's Park is here, how to tie in with the flood protection measures that happen there. And so the idea is that this blue line would protect sort of the Sleeper Street and North End. The magenta line would protect along the channel, and then to close the loop, so to speak, would be
Yeah.
deployables that follow,
Oh, I see.
um, that kind of complete that perimeter. And this is something we haven't fully fleshed out because the city deployables uh, initiative is sort of new as of this fall to our team. So how we achieve sort of the completion of that perimeter between the different efforts is still in progress.
All right. And
But
so
it
the
would be a
the magenta.
deployable solution.
Okay, and the magenta line is below the deck. Is that correct? Below the surface of the or is that expressed above?
So it's there are continuous concrete footings below
Yeah.
grade,
Okay, I think I remember seeing that on the
and
section.
those receive like the posts that
Yeah.
then
Okay.
the stop logs slot into. And so there's, I don't know the exact detail at the moment, but every 4 feet or so, there's a fitting for a post, I believe,
Yeah.
um, to support the stop logs.
Okay. All right. Those are the things that got raised in my mind. So if the other commissioners want to weigh in, please go ahead.
Yeah, David, David, that point you made at the end about the, not necessarily moving the hoistway sills up in order to, to maintain that proportionality or perspective versus the window openings. I at first I was thinking, well, no, that kind of makes sense, but your final point was, if we don't need to really move them from a flood protection standpoint, same if they're just left as they are. I happen to agree with that. So, change the window sills, but leave the hoistway sills alone. That's my first point. Same one, the look of this, the extra facade that we're sort of overlaying on here. And I'm sure there's no way to find brick that looks as weathered and, nice and dirty as the existing surface of the building, but it does seem to be a little bit kind of, it really does stand out against the old surface. And I don't know if there's, some technique for weathering the stuff to make it kind of blend in a little bit more. I mean, it's obviously going to be, it is a protective measure and people will recognize it as such. But if it wasn't quite so obtrusive, maybe that would be a goodness. And the last point is having the sort of preferred approach of having the sort of lower level of granite running along the kind of sidewalk level. What are our dimensions on that again? I think you said something around 12 or 18 inches. Does it need to be that high necessarily, or a couple of the renderings, it sort of looked more like it was like maybe 6 or 8 inches, sort of just up to ankle height, which to me would be kind of a little bit more in keeping with it. It wouldn't again be quite as obtrusive. And I realize the sort of practical value of this, but maybe just sort of keep that smaller rather than, 18 inches is kind of like a big chunk of granite
Right.
down at that level.
Yeah, I think that
Other commissioners have a thought on that? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I agree that I think that a lower granite level could certainly make sense. One thing we're studying is sort of how the topography changes down, especially down that long run of Sleeper Street.
Right.
But I think the idea being
That's
is that 6 inches.
noticeable.
Yeah. But I think
Maybe
that
not enough, but yeah.
Right. But I think a good degree of protection from like thinking about shoveling and salting could be achieved with a less than 18 inches of granite, certainly. So I think
because some of your comparable examples on Summer Street and elsewhere on Congress and so forth they really are sort of like they just sort of interrupt the flow of the brick kind of facade look, and I've never been a fan of those particular buildings because of that. So just to try and keep that to as small of a proportion as possible would also be good.
I agree with the commissioner's comments, especially 313 Congress that comes up so high that it actually sort of starts to really dominate the lower level of those windows.
Exactly.
I think I'll just state I agree entirely with David's comments about the hoistway. I think that you could leave the existing condition where it is if that's possible from a resiliency standpoint, and agree with Tom's comments about particularly the variety of the color of the brick, that the multicolored nature of that facade is so critical to its characteristic that even if weathering is not possible, although that would be quite great, it would be wonderful to have some variety in the color so that we have a bit of a unique characteristic even to that element. The other thing that I'm not sure I agree even sort of with my own comment here, but I'm curious to what extent you've studied having some variety as opposed to just one long ubiquitous line that runs the entire length of the facade. I'm talking about variety in the height of the elevation. There is a sense that there's a rhythm and a staccato to the way that the punches interrupt the flow of walking down Sleeper Street. So this isn't a request as much as something just to consider as your team furthers the design. But I do want to thank you for the completeness of the presentation, in particular going into the strategies that you considered that did not work. And so it's great to see that the Children's Museum is such a treasure for the city and for the neighborhood in particular. And I think it's fantastic that Charlene and the whole team here have taken such a proactive stance towards this. I think it could really serve as a model for other similar buildings in the neighborhood.
Ray, I'd like to just kind of take you up on that idea of a slightly variegated, sort of additional layer. It's really kind of stunning to me to imagine that, but thinking of other facades, various new buildings where that's a means of expressing just kind of some visual interest. It's not simply the sort of minimalist approach 100% along this plane. You kind of mix and match the pieces of it, as it were, for just a little more visual kind of interest, if you will. I don't know.
Yeah.
David, you sort of see the benefit maybe of considering that?
You're muted, David. And there's some examples, I think other examples along Farnsworth where this kind of a treatment is present, where there's just some subtle shifting in height so that it isn't just one big monolithic treatment at ground level.
Here
some of this is cured.
We just covered it up.
Yeah, some of it's cured by David's comment around the leaving the existing hoistways at the elevation. That will take the edge off a
Sure.
bit. I think another thing to just be
Sure.
sensitive to is that sidewalk is so narrow already. I'm curious, I think in the section I saw that there does seem to be, at least if I'm reading the section, that it does seem to be there's going to be a new sidewalk, or is this not?
Yes.
When they
So
can accommodate more than one person walking down it.
Yeah.
It's really kind of a useless sidewalk.
Maybe
on
we
top
could
of
have
it, you know,
1.5
right,
people. Is it possible?
Right. I think well, 5 feet. I guess that's code sort of width, maybe, or I don't know. But
I know it's a
it would definitely
constrained.
improve
I know
Hey,
it's a
the
constrained
walkability of that street.
Yeah, hey guys, I want to
Yeah.
jump in quickly. Jeff Alexis, Public Works Engineering, also the PM of the Congress Street, Sleeper Street, A Street
Okay.
design. Sorry, yeah, this plan, sorry, it's a little bit outdated. This was prior to us changing the configuration of the roadway to be one way on Sleeper Street. That sidewalk will be proposed to be 7 feet wide, adjacent to the Children's Museum.
Wonderful.
So
Yeah,
yes,
great.
so yeah, so the
And then
extension of
making it making the street one way and
Yes,
I think
yes.
adding a
Yeah.
bike lane
You guys did
to
show
it.
the plan on I think on a subsequent sheet on the presentation that did show the correct
Yeah.
width.
It looked right in the section. And
So
the
it's
idea is that
moving- is it
you know-
moving south towards
This-
north? Okay.
Yep, the sidewalk is moving down south to the other side. Yep.
And the idea, Jeff, is that the proponent will remove the sidewalk once, and then the new sidewalk will be expanded when they're doing all of the subsurface work. It's not as though the sidewalk is going to be expanded and then this work will be a separate phase. This will all happen as one phase. Is that right?
That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying. We're trying to work with
Okay.
the Boston
Goal.
Children's Museum to do this as one process to limit disruption.
So, Baber, this is Chelsea, and I just wanted to say that one of the reasons that this advisory review is so important tonight is that this design team has been working tirelessly to sort of coordinate with 2 city projects that are happening on either side of the building. And so we're certainly anxious to help them along the way there.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to get back to I wasn't sure I understood what Raber and Tom were talking about, this sort of line, instead of having a single line of the where the brick, the new facade sort of comes out. You wanted that to be sort of undulate that a little bit.
Part of this is solved a little bit by your comment, David, of just leaving the hoistways where they are in their evaluation.
Right.
We're looking at these facades here, which is something of an angle we won't experience on the street, because when you're going down Sleeper, you're going to be looking quite acute to the facade. And so something that's kind of nice right now about the existing treatment is that you have these little openings and window ways, and you have the hoistway at one height, and then you have the windows at another height. And most of that variety goes away once, of course, all of that becomes bricked over at a pedestrian level. And so it's not something that I necessarily have an answer for, but it could be as simple as leaving some of those windows below the 5-foot elevation that you've established and having floodproofing behind them, just something to add a little bit of variety so that this doesn't become one big monolithic brick surface. Of course, again, some of this is also cured a little bit by the earlier comment about having some more variety to the texture, so that the texture is more in keeping with
Right.
the multicolored and kind of beautifully varied bricks within the facade. But I think that's what we're all instinctively, both as a design team and commissioners, we're trying to prevent this from becoming the sort of image of an enormous monolithic wall, right? This is why
I mean,
the design team
going to
is
be a blank for
Oh,
sure. There's
yeah.
going to be a big blank wall.
Right.
But, I
100
think,
feet of blank wall,
so were you suggesting though that you leave the window, like say the expression of the window length is there, but it actually is waterproof behind that first layer of brick?
Yeah, we did this on a project recently on Melcher, right? Where we had a proponent who wanted to have a window with
Yeah.
a bar that went across the window. And we had various windows that came all the way down, and we decided to keep this balcony in place where the bar would have been, and from the bar where the bar was down, we had a kind of, the glass was within that position. So you just wonder whether the variety of some of these apertures can be maintained by leaving the window sills more or less where they are and just keeping your flood proofing in place permanently. I mean, we've talked about those as deployables in the apertures that are the hoistways, but is there a scheme where the team would be comfortable leaving those as permanent and in place dry flood proofing that are deployed within those apertures, so you continue to have something of a rhythm that goes below the 5-foot elevation, as opposed to everything just kind of being ubiquitously at 5 feet, except the hoistways.
Yeah,
But
well, I
again,
mean,
it's a suggestion, it's an idea,
Yeah.
not so much a request.
I mean, I guess it's
It
worth
makes it
looking
like
at.
overly complex, or maybe it's not,
Yeah,
it's
and
not
the
doable.
other thing that design team's doing, which is quite great again, and thank you for the attention to detail on the tiebacks, the star shaped tiebacks.
Right.
And Mike, those
Yeah.
are the kinds of details that you really experience that make up quite a large amount of your field of view at the pedestrian level that don't read, of course, in an elevation.
Yeah.
When you're walking along the sidewalk, those little details are a bigger part of the experience.
No,
than-
but they're a little piece, a little piece of the interest of that facade. And
Yeah.
people are walking by going, "Gee, I wonder what those are for." Oh, they're tiebacks. Oh,
Yeah, they
wow,
invite
that's
a
amazing.
question. Yeah, they're
Right,
an accent that
right.
invites a question about the larger structure. So again, it's a comment. I would
Yeah.
just encourage the design team to continue that thread that you've started with this, really your concept of the tiebacks at the start, to look for opportunities to, even though and I think commission, we support quite obviously that this level of intervention is necessary. Just do everything you
Yeah.
can to continue to maintain the really unique characteristics and the unique identity of
Yeah.
character of that while doing what you.
Peculiarity of
The
whole building.
peculiarities are okay. It doesn't have to become a kind of
Right, exactly.
homogenous thing. That your peculiarities are the things to celebrate.
Yeah, I mean, I think, this is I understand what you're getting at, and I think you're not going to be able to disguise this at all, in fully, and I understand that. But this might start now to tell the new story of the Fort Point Channel District here, where once upon a time was, windows were able to be where they wanted to be, and we didn't have to deal with water infiltration. Now this is what has to happen, and I think that will start to tell a new story.
Yeah.
All right, so I do want to go through if I know that the staff had had made some comments, and I know that we're not going to vote on this obviously tonight, but there were, I think when it seems like this is, going to have to be accepted. We can't possibly say no to it. So, and we shouldn't. So I think, and I won't be here for the next hearing, but, I think it's worth looking at the staff's comments. There are a series of, as a proviso, there would be certain things that they would want to be able to maintain, at least the staff maintain, not jurisdiction, but review over as the project progresses. So I would urge the two commissioners to look at those comments and see if that can be incorporated for the full motion when it's when the application comes forward.
Understood.
Now, I'm just trying to remember, since this is advisory, we don't take public comment, do we?
You have the option to. I have the slide ready if you would like to take public comment, but you don't have to.
Well, I guess we could. I think it's as long as we urge that they be brief. I don't think, and then any final comments can be made at the full application. So sure, we'll
2 hours or less.
Two
for the
minutes.
public
Yeah,
comment.
2 minutes or
minute-
less.
How about
Cut
2 minute
your-
warning? Yeah.
We cut your mic off. All right. So members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application and discussion. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at fortpointldc@boston.gov.
Honestly, I'm not seeing any raised hands.
Yep. Okay.
We did not receive any written public comment in advance of the hearing.
All right. Okay, so we can then close the public comment period. And so do you feel you got enough information here tonight, I hope, to go forward with this? best to the applicant. So
We are very thankful to the commissioners for all of your feedback, and we will take it to hand, and we thank you. And on behalf of the Children's Museum, we are making it our point to stay here, and this is our way of doing it so that we can keep our history in the 4-Point district. And we are very thankful for you. And we encourage everyone to ask questions because this is part of an educational moment for the 4-Point and beyond. So we want people to be comfortable living with water. And so this is the story that we're going to be telling from now on. This is how we can live with water, and this is what other buildings can do. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah,
Well, thank
it's a
you.
living
And thanks
example
for
of what you're teaching, which is
thanks
great.
for your proactive nature on this. And please, as a resident, let us know what we can continue to do to help. As I said, the Children's Museum is a real treasure. And so, I hope there are others contributing financially to this significant effort. So,
Well, one of the reasons we're in such a hurry is because we have the city obviously partnering with them, and we all want to do things once and for so many reasons. But the other reason is because we are close to raising all the money that we need to complete this interior piece. And before, the fates get a hold of us, we want to get the work done.
Yeah.
And
I get it.
and you have,
spend it or lose it.
you have cost estimating and all those.
Absolutely. We are grateful for Sasaki and Arup, and we have Turner doing pre-construction and our seismic engineers. And we are just going as quickly as, good business would have you do it. But like I said, the city's desire to get in there is such a motivator. And we know from our neighbors and from us too that disrupting on Fleeper Street is really a big deal. So that's kind of why we want to get in the ground in April if we can do this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, do you have any questions for us?
Godspeed.
Any questions for the commission from the design team?
We're going to take everything that you've had. If the staff have been so super supportive, I just want to mention that because they were kind to meet with us a couple times and give us their advice and our approach. And as Michelle mentioned, we are, an educational institution, and we have approached this whole work to try to be a model for other businesses that need to do this work. So, we are trying to, again, be pretty transparent about what it takes to get this done. And we just hope that when we come back in January, we'll try to give mention to all the things that you raised and hopefully do it in a way that we can afford, and will be it.
Hopefully not moving those granite sills will reduce some of Turner's estimates.
We heard you.
Go,
What is
you
that
go back to
expression?
them
We
and
heard
let them
you
know
twice.
if they don't.
We got an end of the year coupon going, so it's
That's great. That's great, Mike.
Special before December 31st.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. We appreciate it. And again, the presentation was really an excellent one. So
really terrific job. Thank
Very
you.
thorough. Amazing.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you.
All right. And our last, we have this is ratification of the October 9 public hearing minutes. We have a motion to accept those.
I will motion to accept those minutes.
All right. In a second.
I will second that.
All right. We'll do just a voice vote on this. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None. All right. So those are in. And finally, staff updates.
Sure. So, as you guys know, this is David's last meeting. We had a little article about him in our newsletter, but I just wanted to reiterate again that we're so grateful for his 25 years of service. I think that your work at the BLC and especially all of your work at 4-Point Channel, from literally working on the study report to sharing it, has just been really exciting. And I know that myself and other staff members who've had the chance to be the planners for Fort Point Channel have really enjoyed working with you for all these years. I feel like every time I come to a hearing, I learn something, and it keeps me engaged and excited about my work on a personal level. And I just want to thank you for all of your energy and enthusiasm and the care that you have.
Wow.
We'll miss you, and feel free to pop in and make comments as you wish. You're a free
We're
range member of
expecting
the
it, David.
public.
We're expecting you to.
Yeah, well, you guys will be
David, you can-
fine. You will manage to hang on to the reins quite well, and I think you'll do a fine job. So I'm not that worried about it at all. And but yeah, Fort Point was certainly the main commission was wonderful to be a part of that as well. But the Fort Point has always been my special baby because of the being a part of the actual study committee to form the guidelines. That was quite a challenge, and that was an interesting process for two full years it took. We met every 3 weeks for 3 hours, and came up with the product that is now law. So it's been great, and I'm gonna miss everyone. I'm not gonna go on and on, but it's a big deal for me, certainly after 25 years. But I just felt it's time, and I certainly
the early photographs. Your early photographs of you, David, you did have considerably more hair. So
Oh no, that I don't know where Rachel pulled that from
They're
somewhere. And
Marxist.
I was going to say I was just a baby back then on that photo, but yeah, it's probably a 15-year-old photo, maybe.
Oh, but David,
No,
I
but
can
but
tell
a
you as
terrific,
no,
a
please,
terrific
Bob.
accomplishment, David. You're sort of putting a very fine point on it. That has become law. Those study group meetings that went on interminably, I'm sure for all you guys, and that you stayed the course and had the patience and judgment and some stubbornness on occasion too to insist on certain standards being met.
Well, yeah,
and
I
that
gotta
codified.
Yeah,
Huge
I mean, I got to say that what I think is what those meetings did for the study when we were doing the study report, they were attended by all of the lawyers that represented the owners and the developers of the, property owners of the district, and they were all there to do one thing, to minimize the effects of the
Right.
of these guidelines on their properties. And so I think what it did was, I think we struck the perfect balance of maintaining and holding on to the character defining features. And those three words are what carries through all of the guidelines. Maintaining the character defining features but yet still allowing for contemporary expression when things need to change. And I think the guidelines hit that balance. So I think that's great. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
David, each meeting that whenever the presentation ends, I have some thoughts in my mind, and I'm always inspired and educated by your comments,
wow.
learning something new every single meeting. And I'm a little nervous about you not being part of the team, because I'm always thinking, I'm going to be thinking, gosh, there's something here I'm missing that David would have really would have had. So
Raber, I think you're going to do a pretty good job.
You'll do fine. You'll do fine.
Yeah, no, and you know what, David? The other thing is you can still come back at any time. Be the the curmudgeon from the public in the audience who goes on and on about
these commissioners don't know what they're talking about.
Nobody cares about. Exactly.
Yeah, I have a lot more freedom of expression now, so
now you can say whatever you want.
He actually has to listen to you. It's really you've got a great position coming up.
It's a great project to end on, though, because this project tonight is a non-trivial project. And so
no, it is. And I'll tell you one other little sidebar, which was kind of ironic tonight too, was when I first moved to the city, my very first job when I started my career was with Sasaki Associates as a landscape architect. So that was kind of a nice fine point on everything. I'm sure all these guys certainly were not there when I was there, but that was a good firm. So you're in good hands with them. So
yeah.
All right.
Tell me that. Anyway, all right. So should we have
So
a drum roll or anything? If
we have to, well, we have to do the
Oh,
one final adjournment, right? So
Congratulations also,
adjournment,
Rachel. If
yeah.
we don't see you in January, you know, best of
yeah,
luck with your
Rachel, I gotta
trial,
find,
yeah.
you know.
I hope somebody lets me know, with a little email or something or a text just to let me know, when the event happens. So we'll be thinking about you.
Well, thanks everyone. We're
All right.
That's
excited.
very
It's real.
exciting, Rachel. Yay.
Thanks again, David.
All right. Well, thank you both for
And thank you,
everyone
David,
for your
for
comments.
everything.
I appreciate it. So now, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I will motion to adjourn.
And a second.
All right, I will second that.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None. All right, everyone.
Okay.
Good night.
The gavel comes down on
Right.
final night.
Thanks again.
Thank you,
All
David.
right.
Thank you
Thanks
for everything.
Bye-bye.
everyone. Thanks,
everybody.
David.
See you
Take
guys.
care.
Bye.
Bye.